again, Chris here with All PC Repair. For today's video, we're doing another wall cabinet rack installation. As far as rack installation videos go, this one is pretty basic. However, we do tackle the issue of how to mount a wall cabinet securely on the metal framing studs. If this is something that you're trying to figure out, please stay tuned and watch how we did it. Something else too, we're only installing the cabinet and the patch panels during this phase of the project. Let us know in the comments below if you'd like us to do a follow-up video with the service provider equipment being installed and set up. But without further delay, let's dive in. Okay folks, back with another rack project. These are a dime a dozen on YouTube, but we've got another interesting problem with this one that we're going to discuss. It comes up a lot, so probably want to stick around and see what we're doing here. Little background, we got our wall where we're going to put a 9U. Those are pretty typical. The problem that we're running into though is that this wall is 1 metal studs and 2 it's 24-inch on center. So we're going to need something to mount the rack to. We can't just hang it off the drywall. And for that, my suggestion is I've got a piece of 3/4-inch plywood, and to cover this 24 inches, we are going to go with about a 30-inch width. Got a 24-inch tall. That should be plenty enough for a 9U. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get this thing up here and see what happens. All right, so with a little YouTube magic and a little bit of help from an off-camera helper, we've got the plywood on the wall and we've got 2 screws into the metal studs to get us started. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a bunch of more screws down the side of these plywood here. And I'm just going to mark a quick reference line on each of these. And let's see, get this one in. All right, now that that is done, got our handy impact driver. And we're just going to go ahead and start putting a bunch of these in. For the last one. All right, well that's a good solid backing for our rack. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Steel studs are actually pretty strong, but they're made out of a corrugated thin steel, so Hence the problem we're running into is these screws don't actually have a lot of material to bite into. But now that that's up, we are going to work on getting the template for the rack up here, make the holes for it, and then we'll get that thing up on the wall. Okay, so we're back for the next step here. The rack itself provided this handy little template with the marking points where we got to mount it. So we've spotted this up here, and I've got my 4 marks where we are going to put 5/16 lag fasteners in. To make this a little easier, I'm going to go ahead and just pre-drill some pilot holes in this plywood so that when we put this rack up here, it's easier to find. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's our 4th hole. All right, now the fun part. We're gonna lug this cabinet up here and fasten it in place. So I've got my 5/16 fasteners ready to go, and I don't like busting my knuckles in these things, so I got a really long socket adapter here. We're just gonna put this aside for a moment. And well, so here's our cabinet. We're gonna get this up here. I'm gonna get one of my fasteners, and we're gonna find that reference hole, or one of them. And there we go. And I'm gonna get my socket wrench. And we are going to start twisting this thing in. And we are almost there. There's one. Now, lift this up and get the next bolt started. Just got one more of these to go. All right, all the bolts are loaded, so I'm just tightening them down. Just remember, you're only going into 3/4 plywood in this instance, so you don't want to really wrench these things down. All right, and there you have it, folks. I am happy with that mounting arrangement. Next part, now we just got to put the equipment in. All right, for the next step on this project, we're going to get the customer's UPS installed. I'm going to show you that in a moment. First, I'm going to go ahead and set all the cage nuts up on this rack. I'm just going to install all 9 U's just in case they make changes. We don't have to go fishing for these things later. So I'm just going to go up to one side here and then right up the other side. And something I'll point out to you is I'm installing these things sideways as opposed to upright. One of the reasons I do that is when you're moving stuff around in the rack and you're, say it's something particularly heavy, so you're trying to slide it up and down these rails. If you install these cage nuts in the vertical orientation that I described, you're likely to catch one and knock it out of its holder. Now we could have gone, this rack does support direct threading, or basically where you're not using cage nuts. That's my preference, is not to use that. There's arguments to be made either way, but one of the things I like is when a cage nut fails, you can just pop it out and replace it, and you don't have a stripped thread to try and figure out. And to keep things consistent, I'm using M6 cage nuts throughout this project. The other thing that I personally hate is having different size screws on everything when you're trying to rearrange stuff. And I'm also right-handed, so doing the ones on the right side with the left hand is going to take me a little bit longer. I was born left-handed actually, but I was switched at birth. Almost near the top. Of course, I dropped the last one. Let's try again. All right, so cage nuts are all in, and pardon the motion, but I'm going to bring this around, and so you'll now be able to see more of the extent of the work that's going to happen from here on out. Cage nuts are all in. This way, we've got all 9 U's covered for any future changes. Next thing we got to get in here is customers getting a UPS for this job. It's just a basic Cyber Power 1U. So we're we're going to go ahead and get this one mounted, and because I don't like lifting things, we're going to put it in the bottom. So just going to get that staged. I want to get the screw for the top wire, or the top hole rather. Oh, hey, check it out. We needed that panel out anyways for the power. So there, I did 2 steps in one. So there's the first of the screws. And you know what, I'm going to take this other panel out temporarily so I've got something to lift this thing with. Come on, here. And for those of you new to this, just be aware that when you're putting a piece of equipment in a rack like this, you've got top and bottom screws. The bottom screws are the ones that hold all the weight. Hence, if you're paying attention, this thing is gradually tipping upward as I screw them in. So, last screw. And we're just going to tighten these all down. All right, that is in. Now we've got power connections, so this is pretty straightforward stuff. We're just going to unwind this power cord, drop it through the service access, and then we are going to put one of these panels back in that I popped out. We don't need both. I don't know, I might even make a cutout hole for this wire so we don't have to leave the panel out. Y'all can tell me what you think of that idea. But next thing we're going to do is plug the ventilation fans in. And it's tight back here. I'm not going to bring the camera, guys. All right, so our UPS and our ventilation fans are installed. Coming up next, we need to get all this wire tipped and installed. All right, so now we're back and we are going to be working on the patch panel now. So what I've got here, get a little closer, you can see this. It's just a 24-port keystone panel. There's cheaper ways to do this, but this option is more versatile. In this case, the client is getting 7 data ports, and they're going to get 7 telephone ports. So we're going to go ahead and populate this with the right color keystones because we're using red for phone, blue for data. And when you're working with one of these, you just take this and you just get the bottom seated in, snap it, and it's in. And let's see if I can get another one here. Boom, there we go. And we're just going to go right along the line here and get all 7 of these. If I put it in the right way, that is. I told you all 7 each. So that gives us 4, 5, 6, and 7. Because these are nice too, because you can put other types of ports in here. This job doesn't call for it, but for example, here's one that does coax cable. So if you need to incorporate that into one of your panels, you can. And these numbers, by the way, correspond to labels I put on the plates throughout the building. Telephone starts at 13. So we've got these handy little blank covers. So we just snap that in and you get something like that. Because appearances matter. And that one didn't go in all the way. Come on, here we go. So this gives you a nice finished look, plus the ability to come back later and add extra ports later if the client decides to say move something and they want another pull. All right, so like I said, red for the telephone. So we're gonna add 7 reds. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And here's the 4th one. Does feel like Sesame Street yet? There's 5. 6. And we'll slide the different brand. All right. And 7. There we go. And that one's to slide the different brand. I got OCD. That's going to bother me. So, I'll swap that one real quick. And no telling where I got that one from. All right, and like before, I'm going to cover up the rest of these blanks so this looks pretty when we put it in here. And let's see, I lost my orientation there. And there we go. That's what the customer's patch panel is going to look like. Well, still got to put it in. So I'm going to get my bucket out of the way, and we're going to put this on temporary hangers so that I don't have to worry about holding this thing in place while I'm working. So, see, I got my zip ties here hung. If you want to know more about that, by all means, mention it in the comments below. But I'm just going to tie the corners here with some basic zip ties. Make sure I'm keeping it even. I'm going to tie the right way. Apparently I can't get that right. Alright, so there. That's going to hang freely while I work on this mess. So the next thing to do is I'm going to open up one of the access ports on here. And I'm just going to tilt this up a little bit so that you got a better view of what I'm working on. And here's one of my other temporary zip ties. So I got my cutters here. And might as well keep these handy. We're going to be going through a lot of ties on this. In case you're wondering, I put cheap tags on the ends of these wires, but I said they're all numbered and they go somewhere, so that's how I'm keeping track of what goes where. So, this hot mess of cabling now goes down into our cabinet. Just gotta make sure these things don't tangle on themselves. Alright, so people ask this, so this is where I'm going to start the service loop. So I'm just going to go at the top here. Start basically latching all these wires together. And yeah, I'm always And folks, I am bad for losing track of tools, so if I lose track of my cutters, feel free to tell me where I left them. Yeah, this isn't live, I guess. All right. Wrong way. And let's see. Those can go there. Another one here. And I'm trying to keep all these as parallel as possible. They actually make a tool that'll help you do this. That's just money I don't want to spend right now, and this isn't enough wire to worry about it. And in case you're curious or you've never heard of it, I believe they call it an Ethernet comb. So if you want to figure out more about that, go ahead and go Google it. And I've lost track of my garbage box, so tentatively speaking, I'm just flinging these tie wastes anywhere I can. And I'll just have to clean that up later. I'm also about out of ties here. I'm going to pull another bag out soon. We are almost as far as I'm going to go at the moment. Alright, so that's as far as I'm going to go right now. And I caught you on the wire, folks. Sorry about that. That's as far as I'm going to go with tying this bundle together because we need some workspace on the end of this. So the next step is I'm going to find an anchor point somewhere up in the ceiling and make a bit of a loop of this bundle and just tie it off. That way, when we come back in the future, if we have to cut something off one of these and pull some more, we actually have something to work with. Alright, so I am going to have to be creative with that because that's quite heavy. Let's see. Move my ladder a little bit. Get up here. How am I doing on space? Yeah, it's about as much as I want to do. Alright, so I got about 18 to 24 inches of loop up in the ceiling. That should be plenty. Probably won't ever need it because I don't make mistakes. And they'll probably come back to bite me at some point, I'm sure. All right, so now we're gonna get all these things tipped and put in the right order, and then we're gonna mount this panel in place. All right, folks, coming back from a fresh resupply here. I've got my RJ45s. I'm low on ties, so I got another bundle here. And I don't know if you guys were noticing what I've got going on my belt here, but let me, since I got to bring another pack out, I'm going to elaborate on what I'm doing. So that bundle's almost dead. So I'm going to just stab a hole in this bag right there. I typically use a Phillips I have for this, but I'm already on the ladder. I'm not getting down. And well, the other part, so I got my holes on the top. And then I'm going to go and just make a little crescent-like cut in the middle of the bag. All right, so like so. And got one out already. But then I can just slip these through. And when I go to thread them here, they don't need to be tight. You just got to hear that little clicking where it's starting to get, boom. Now I got a dispenser. So I'm going to go right to left because, well, that's just what I've decided I'm going to do. So that is coax cable. We're not doing anything with that. Since we're going right to left, what I'm looking for here is on all my lovely markings, I have a wire somewhere that says 7. Here we go. So I'm only working with the red wire first, so what I'm going to do, I want to trim it right here. That way my blue wire still has the 7 on it. And so this is going to come around, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to secure it here. And we're going to go through a few of these in this process because this is going to be largely temporary, but we're going to whip it around this way basically. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm sizing up where my plug's going to go, get rid of the extra, lightly score the outside jacket. There we go. And then this is the best part. We get to go along and tip all these. Now I do enough of these that I don't need the chart to tell me the order. But one secret to making this a little easier is make sure you get a good decent length on these. That way you've got plenty of room to pull these out, manipulate them. Let's see, what's light green. And this is 568B wiring pattern for those of you that are wondering. So I'm going to get my garbage box just so that I'm closer to this. just end up making a mess here. So we're getting these. Yeah, this one creaked. Blue, light blue, green. Orange, orange. Light green, blue, light blue, green, light brown, brown. And something else too is I'm not using pass-throughs. My tool supports them. I have some, but I've got a bunch of the older ones. So I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. So we're just checking that all the wires are snugly in as per each end. Get my crimper, crimp it, and stick our wire in our port. And last thing here is to go ahead and secure it with a tie. Now, ones I got on me are not going to fit these openings, so I'm going to get some more of those, and then we're going to do a time lapse of the rest of this, so you don't have to sit here bored out of your skull. wrap this up here, at least for the part that we're doing today. I'll get my temp ties out of here. And here's two. And we're just gonna get my tail off this one. And that one wire is going to stick out slightly because that one ended up being slightly shorter than I anticipated. Yeah, it bugs me, but not the end of the world. And this black one is for the internet telephone provider. They're stuck with cable out here, so when they come to do their thing, we will finish this up. Let's see. A little screwdriver. All right, and first screw. Second screw. Here's our third. And then we'll get our fourth one here. Alright, so that's just going to go up for now. The plan is the more screws. So the telephone switch is going to go above this, so we're going to leave a space. And then we're going to put in the shelf, first shelf. Because my understanding is that only the telephone switch is rackable. We'll talk about changes made there at a future time with the customer. The customer's data switch is just a little cheap consumer switch, so it's going to have to go on a shelf also. We're going to have to move these anyways, but I'm just going to pick a spot for now. That looks like as good of a place as any. Here's wire for the modem. Well, it's just not going to stay. I'm not going to fight. So now that means you got to put the door on. Just doesn't want to stay. There we go. There it is. Cabinet on the wall. Stupid easy, right? That said, we'll call it quits for the day. It's time to clean up. See you in the next one. Well, folks, that concludes today's video. For those of you that made it this far, thank you for watching. Be sure to do all the YouTube things by liking, commenting, and subscribing to our channel. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't, well, nobody's perfect, but I don't mind if you give it a thumbs down. If there's a topic you'd like to see us cover in a future video, feel free to mention it in the comments below. At All PC Repair, we're a smarter way to do IT.